Alright, I think it's live. I think so.
In this video, I'll be showing you how to adjust OBS screen size. First, you may be referring to the preview size. To increase the preview, simply move your cursor so it's above a panel and it will change. Click and drag the panel to make the preview size larger. If this doesn't work, then right-click on the preview and go to Preview Scaling, then select Scale to Window. Next, you can adjust the size of a source or image. Select the source you want to resize. Click and hold on one of the corners or side points, then drag to size. By default, the size of the source will maintain its aspect ratio. You can change this by holding Shift while dragging. You can quickly undo unwanted changes by pressing Ctrl-Z or Command-Z on a Mac. Additionally, you can crop the screen size by dragging in a point while holding Alt. If you're unable to make any adjustments, then right-click on the source, go to Transform, and select Reset Transform. Additionally, you can fine-tune screen size by going to Transform and selecting Edit Transform. Here, you can adjust your source size, rotation, and crop pixel by pixel. Close when done. You will now be able to adjust screen size in OBS.
Transform? Edit transform. What's the size of the whole screen? Three four four zero bytes. 3440 by 1440. Is that right? Whoa, what the fuck? I didn't mean that. I mean the whole streaming size.
Yes. Today, I'll be showing you how to separate audio tracks in OBS. This will allow you to have In this video, I'll be showing you how to adjust OBS screen size. First, you may be referring to the preview size. To increase the preview,
Anyway, this should do it. Let's. So what we were doing was learning about Proxmox. So history. I will use installation. Okay. Weird. Anyway, there's yeah, this guy, full course.
Hello again everyone, and welcome back to Learn Linux TV. In today's video, what I'm going to do is give you an updated getting started guide on Proxmox. And that's what I have right here, a Proxmox server. You're probably wondering what the server was on my desk, but given the title...
I already watched this video. Where is the second part? He had it in his playlist.
Hello and welcome to Learn Linux TV. On this channel, it's all about...
Linux.
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 Linux. Linux.
Linux.
Linux Extreme!
And on this channel, you'll find distribution reviews, tutorials,
Where is
and
that
deep
song
dives into
coming from?
complex topics that would otherwise be difficult to learn. On this channel, learning Linux is made easy. And regardless of what kind of Linux user you happen to be, there's Linux-related content on this channel for everyone. So make yourself at home. There's hundreds, yes, hundreds of videos on this Thank channel. you so that much are for all checking about out Linux. Learn Linux TV,
So if
your
you're a
source
Linux
for
fan
Linux
just
related
like me,
or you're just getting started, then this is absolutely...
Jesus. I streamed now. I mean, I turned on the OBS and started streaming. Now nothing works.
Thank you so much for checking out Learn Linux TV, your source for Linux-related fun and learning. I just love making this content for you guys, but making such content isn't cheap. If you enjoy my content, please consider supporting me by becoming a patron. As a patron, you'll enjoy ad-free versions of every video that I upload, and also, at specific tiers, you'll also enjoy early access to select videos before the rest of the world. But even if you're not able to support me by becoming a patron, no problem. There's other ways to help. You can simply click the like button on the videos that you enjoy. That would help out. In addition to that, word of mouth helps as well. So if you're enjoying my content, please help spread the learning by telling your friends and coworkers about the channel. If you're looking for something to read, well, you're in luck. Hello and welcome.
Was that a masturbate?
And you can check out my latest books at
You know, mastering Ubuntu server, I read like a masturbating.
learnlinux.tv. Hello and welcome to my Proxmox series. You guys have been asking for this for quite a while now. I mean, I did do a Proxmox series in the past, but that was a short series. You guys were asking for something a little bit more in-depth, and I'm happy to announce that's exactly what you're getting in this course. And in this course, I'm going to teach you guys everything you need to know to get your very own Proxmox server up and running. But not to be outdone, I'm also going to teach you how to maintain it, update it, and even create your very own cluster. It's going to be a lot of fun. In this episode, it's all about getting started, what you need to get started, what you can expect out of this course, and so on. So, who is this course for exactly? Well, this course is for those of you that have never used Proxmox before, or perhaps you have, and you want to explore the finer details such as clustering, which is one of the topics we'll be getting into later on in this course. If nothing else, if you're like me and you love Proxmox, I think you're going to love this series, because again, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know to maintain your very own Proxmox server and possibly even a cluster. Now, what I'm going to do at this point is give you guys some additional information as far as what you can expect out of this course. So, like I mentioned in the intro, this is an introduction to my course on Proxmox. We're going to be getting started with Proxmox in this series. And for this presentation, I'm going to make it as short as possible because I know presentations are boring, but there's definitely some information that I want to make sure you guys have at your disposal before you get started. Now, first of all, it's important to understand what Proxmox actually is. I'm sure most of you guys probably already know what it is because, well, I mean, if you're looking for a tutorial series on it, then chances are you've already at least Googled it and you know what the goal is that Proxmox is trying to achieve. But at its core, it's a virtualization platform. Its competitors include things like XCP-ng, VMware, a number of others. And there's nothing wrong with those other solutions. Those other solutions are pretty cool in and of themselves. Proxmox is also cool. But, you know, that's what it is. It's a virtualization platform. It allows you to run virtual machines. But not just virtual machines. I mean, yeah, that is the main point here. You use Proxmox because you want to run virtual machines. But one of the things that I really like about Proxmox is that it also lets you run containers as well. And when you create a new resource with Proxmox, you as the administrator, you get to choose whether or not that resource is a virtual machine or if it's a container. It leaves it completely up to you to decide what the best route is for the applications that you want to run. It also has an integrated web UI, or a web console. Now, that might seem like a no-brainer, but you'd be surprised. There's actually virtualization platforms out there that don't integrate the web UI. You have to integrate that yourself. And that might sound like a downside. But honestly, if you weigh the pros and cons, you might prefer to have that separate, or if you're like me, you prefer to have it integrated with the current solution, so you install one thing, and everything you need comes along for the ride. That's one of the things I like about Proxmox. You install it, and you have everything you need right then and there. In addition to that, the Proxmox UI allows you to manage storage, so you can mount storage volumes, you can install updates, and there's plenty more that's built right into the web UI. Now let's talk a little bit about this particular course, how I decided to structure it, and where we go from here. In this course, there's going to be 16 classes in total. And right now, this is the first class. You are here. So I don't need to explain what we're doing in class 1 because we're already doing it. In the second class, what I'm going to do is walk you through the installation process. What I'll do is show you how to install Proxmox, so by the end of the second class, if you're following along with me, you will have your very own Proxmox server set up and ready to go. In the third class, what I'll do is show you the web console. It's going to be more of a general overview in that video, because we'll be exploring the individual concepts in more detail as we go along, so I don't go into too much detail in class 3 about any one thing, but I do give you a high-level overview of the web console, so that way you know how to navigate it. Now, class number 4 is more lecture-based. We're not going to be working on anything in particular in that class, we're just going to have a discussion. The number one question that comes up with Proxmox is, should you use containers or virtual machines? We're going to talk about that. By the end of that video, you'll have a better understanding about what the pros and cons. Are of virtual machines when you compare them against containers. For class number 5, we're going to dive right into virtual machines. Specifically, I'm going to show you the process of launching virtual machines within Proxmox. Class number 6 is all about creating virtual machine templates. I mean, you could actually just set up virtual machines manually every time, which means you have to install the operating system every time. But honestly, I don't really think there's any value in doing all of that work over and over and over again when you could just set up a template to essentially automate a lot of that. If nothing else, templates make the process easier. Continuing, class number 7, we're going to take a break from virtual machines and we're going to dive into containers. So I'll show you the process of launching containers in that class. Class number 8 is all about creating container templates. Just like we can with virtual machines, you can set up templates for containers as well. Class number 9 is all about managing users. By default, you get the root user with Proxmox, but if you are using Proxmox in an organization, then you'll probably not want to use the root account any more than you have to. It's a better idea to create additional users, and you can set up each user to be able to do different things. And that's because Proxmox leaves you in complete control of how you set up everything, including users. So by the end of class 9, you'll understand how to manage users. In class number 10, we're going to explore backups and snapshots. I think that's fairly self-explanatory, but in that class, you'll learn what a backup is compared to a snapshot, and when you should use one versus the other. In class number 11, we're going to explore the integrated firewall. Firewalls are great. Now, you don't have to use the firewall in Proxmox. If you have your own firewall in your network, for example, pfSense, you can just use that. But if you don't have something like that, or if you want to benefit from an additional firewall, then the firewall within Proxmox is pretty good. So in that video, I'll show you how to enable that firewall, and I'll show you how to create your very own rules. In class number 12, we're going to explore the command line interface. I mean, yeah, Proxmox has a pretty cool web console, but what if that isn't working? Or maybe you're like me and you just like the command line. Proxmox allows you to manage your containers and your virtual machines via the command line, and that's exactly what we're going to go over in class number 12. In class number 13, we're going to explore networking. Generally speaking, it's a good idea to have a separate network for your virtual machines when compared to your management network. By default, when you set up Proxmox, you only have one network. So in that video, what we're going to do is explore separating that, which is a best practice. Again, you don't have to do that. And honestly, you don't have to follow along with anything in the series if you don't want to, or if you don't have the hardware to enable you to follow along.
but it's definitely something that you'll want to understand, and you will understand that by the end of that class. In class number 14, we're going to explore shared storage. I'll show you how to mount additional storage, basically NFS shares, into Proxmox, which increases its functionality. Class number 15 is all about clustering. Before class 15, we're basically using one server every single time, but in class 15, that's where things get especially interesting and we work with multiple servers. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I know that because I've already recorded it. The final class, class number 16, is all about high availability.
So, class 16, how long it's gonna take to finish all this? So 20, 20, 40, 40, that's 1 hour. That's 2 hour. 2 hour 50 and a half. That's 3 hours. That's 4 hours. 5 hours. 6, 7, 8. So that's total of 8 hours of just lesson learning. And if we speed it double, that's still 4 hours. Guess what? We got plenty of time.
You could probably argue that I could have included high availability within class 15, but I figured it would be more fun to put it in its own video, which is exactly what I did. In that video, what I'll do is show you how to enable high availability. After, of course, I tell you what's required in order to enable that. And then I'll just disconnect the network to a host, and you can see the virtual machine actually start on another server. Okay, well, all of that's exciting and all, but what do you actually need in order to get started? I mean, do you need to go out and just buy a really expensive server with a ton of RAM and CPUs? Well, I mean, that'd be awesome if you have the money to do that. If you have the extra money to do that, why not? Have fun. But you don't have to. And that leads me to the first bullet point here as far as what you need. You need a server. You need something to install Proxmox onto. It's not a good idea to install Proxmox inside of a virtual machine. You probably could do that, and it might work, but I don't recommend that. You'll definitely want to install Proxmox on a piece of actual hardware. But again, you don't have to buy expensive hardware in order to run Proxmox. You can buy a cheap server from eBay, for example, if you want to. Perhaps you have an extra desktop that's in the closet, and you're not using it for anything. If that's the case, why not turn it into a server? Another thing you can do is run Proxmox on laptops. I know that sounds weird, right? But I did actually do a couple of videos on that subject where I set up Proxmox on laptops. That was really fun. The thing is, as weird as that might sound, a laptop includes a battery, a keyboard, a mouse, and a display. So it's almost like having a server with a built-in KVM all in one. So for those of you that are running Proxmox in a Homelab, that might be something that you want to consider doing. Some people within my audience, they've set up Proxmox on Intel Nuts. That's totally fine. I mean, some of these computers might be a bit resource starved, but as long as you can run at least one virtual machine, then that's probably enough to get started with this course.
Another laptop.
Another thing that you'll need for sure is virtualization support in your CPU. Now this is something that pretty much most computers have nowadays.
This is a Proxmox I'm running on the old laptop, and this whole YouTube watching and accessing from web I'm doing on my new laptop, which is also not really great. I am thinking of getting better one, probably MacBook Pro, but let's see how it goes. First, I want to finish this project.
Definitely check the spec sheet for your computer to find out if it does support virtualization, because that is required. Now, what I found is that quite often, most CPUs will in fact support virtualization, but in the BIOS, it'll be disabled by default. There's a very good chance that when you go to install Proxmox, that's going to complain that you don't actually have support for virtualization, even when you do. If you see that message, just go into the BIOS settings for your device and make sure that virtualization is enabled. If you don't actually have an option for virtualization, then unfortunately, you won't be able to run Proxmox on that particular device. But that's rare. I think most of you will have no problem installing Proxmox because it doesn't really require all that much to get off the ground. Now, in addition, you do need a 64-bit CPU, so if you have an older machine that's 32-bit only, then you'll probably not be able to run this. I don't know why this is, but there's a lot of people out there in the Linux community that are under the false impression that their CPU does not support 64-bit. Keep in mind, we actually had 64-bit support in CPUs since around 2004 or so chances are you probably do have 64-bit support. You also need 1 gigabyte of RAM minimum, and I do mean minimum. If your device has 1 gig of RAM, that's pretty much enough to run Proxmox, and that's it. I mean, it's pretty much useless. So when the documentation for Proxmox is just a minimum of 1 gig, they are literally referring to the absolute minimum. Now, I would say it's better to set the minimum to 2 gigs of RAM, and I'd be even more comfortable if it was 4. Because when you hit 4 gigs of RAM, you have a gig of RAM for the operating system itself, for Proxmox itself. You also have a couple gigs available for a VM or two. Maybe you can squeeze 2 VMs out of that. But containers use fewer resources, so with 4 gigs of RAM, I think you can do pretty well. If you have more than that, even better. Next, you need the fastest storage that you have access to. So if you are building a brand new system for Proxmox, or if you just have a bunch of junk parts in your drawer and you want to assemble them, this is the actual cluster right here that we'll be building in this course. And the reason why I'm able to show you guys this is because I actually come from the future. I come from the future where every episode in the series has already been uploaded, and this is the final product right here. Okay, to be honest, I don't actually film all the videos in the same order that you see them in, so this introduction video is actually the final video that I'm recording. All the other episodes have already been recorded and are being edited right now. But yeah, this is actually the cluster that we'll be building as it will be by the end of video number 16. I have 3 nodes right here, PVE1, PVE2, and PVE3, and throughout the video, we'll be building this cluster right here, what you see on your screen right now.
I have 1 node. I think my computer can only handle 1 node with maybe 2 virtualization, but I don't think it can go more than that. Let me show you my like old laptops uh, specs. So CPU Intel i7, one socket. So yeah, and running Proxmox, obviously Linux, and production ready enterprise repository enable enterprise need value subscription. This is just a Proxmox subscription. CPU uses well, I'm running just one VM and it's already at the highest. And yeah, server load, CPU uses, memory uses, network, IO pressure stall. Oh shit, yeah, there is. I have added one hard drive, external hard drive, but because it is in a different format, it's not showing up. So this is Ubuntu I'm running. It's the lowest, like even if it's on right now, it doesn't take much of a effort or doesn't put much of a load in a device. I will be running, I think, pfSense for the firewall, and this is just a Windows server. I should have actually renamed it properly, but let's see. I'm planning to run pfSense and Ubuntu server in here, Windows server and Windows 11 in different laptop. This is much older, but I think it should be able to handle these two. And this computer that I'm accessing through web, I do have a VMware. I do have VMware here as well, but I don't think I can. So I've got Windows 11 here, pfSense. I tried before, it crashed out a lot, so I think I will be. Now let's see how it goes. I will not run this at the moment because it's gonna take shit ton of CPU for mine.
Other thing is, you don't really need 3 hosts. If you have 3 servers lying around, that's great. You can definitely use them. Today's video is proudly sponsored by Linode. Linode has been doing cloud computing since 2003, which is actually before Amazon Web Services was even a thing. On the Nodes platform, you can get your server up and running in minutes. And they include all the popular distributions, such as Debian, Fedora, Ubuntu, and get this, even Arch Linux. And let's be honest, what could be better than a Linux-focused cloud server provider that lets you tell all of your friends, I run Arch? Linode has multiple server plans available to make any app scalable and flexible. You could use it to host a blog, a VPN server, a Minecraft server, and much more. In fact, Linode is the platform of choice to host the entire web presence of Learn Linux TV. In addition, Linode offers 24/7 365 support, regardless of plan size, so you can get help from a live. And now to have you here, and I'm also very excited to get started, because in this video, we're going to be setting up our very own Proxmox server. I'm going to walk you through the installation process, light, and we'll have a lot of fun of creating a website, specifically the download section down below. So images, but I'll go ahead and update it for the newer version when that time comes. For now, I'm going to click on download. Then I'll save the file.
I need to update.
And we can see that it's downloading right here. So what I'm going to do is give it a few minutes to finish, and then I'll be right back. What I'm going to do is scroll down, and we have quite a few different versions available for USB Imager. That's why I always recommend it. Because it doesn't matter what operating system you are running on your end, it's still the same tool. And that works out pretty well for me. I mean, as a content creator, if I have a tool that works on various operating systems, then I only need to film the process in one single tool. Also, USB Imager is a very small download size, so it's going to download very quickly. Now, in my case, what I'm going to do is download this version right here for Windows. Windows is not my daily driver, but I figured I would show the process in Windows because I know quite a few of you are using Windows, and that makes this video look more familiar to most of you. But if you're running something else, just go ahead and download the version that corresponds to the operating system that you are running on your end. So I'll save it, and it's already done. I didn't even have to edit this part of the video. It was literally that fast. That's pretty cool. All right, so at this point, if I go to downloads, we can see both of the files that we've downloaded right here. So if you weren't already aware, an ISO image is actually an image that's intended to be written to a CD or DVD. But I don't actually recommend that you write this to a DVD or a CD. And the reason for that is because optical media is very slow. What we're going to do is actually write this to a USB flash drive. So even though it's intended for a CD or DVD, we still use the same format. First of all, so USB reader, just keep in mind that this process will actually erase everything on that flash drive. And if you see this particular message when you insert your flash drive,
I would prefer Rufus or Belina Etcher.
I don't think Linux distribution. So disk manager is on allocating the partitions from your actual flash drive, the one that you want to use with Proxmox, because obviously if you delete, we recommend that. Anyway, and at this point, the flash drive has been successful. And what I'm going to do at this point is insert the flash drive. This is what I'm on right now. And what you see in my browser is actually the IPMI interface for my server. This particular interface actually allows me to show you a remote console as I go through the installation process. On your end, you might have a keyboard, mouse, and display attached to your server, and that's totally fine. It doesn't really matter. I just figured that I'd mention this just in case you're curious why I'm showing you a web browser when we're about to install Proxmox. Anyway, what I'm going to do right now is log into my IPMI now.
What did you use?
All right, real. And I'll safely remove the flash drive just to make sure. And what I'm going to do at this point is insert the flash drive into my server. I'm actually going to be using a real hardware server for the series, so I'll plug in the flash drive, and then I'll be right back. All right, so what I've done is I inserted the flash drive into my server, and then I switched the recording scene over to my laptop, which is what I'm on right now. And what you see in my browser is actually the IPMI interface for my server. This particular interface actually allows me to show you a remote console as I go through the installation process. On your end, you might have a keyboard, mouse, and display attached to your server, and that's totally fine. It doesn't really matter. I just figured that I'd mention this just in case you're curious why I'm showing you a web browser when we're about to install Proxmox. Anyway, what I'm going to do right now is log into my IPMI interface. And yes, the username is Velociraptor, and that might seem weird, but just keep in mind they can open doors, so that username made sense to me. Anyway, I'll type in my password. And here we are. So what I'm going to do right now is click on remote control, and the server is actually powered down right now, so I'm going to click on the power button right here to turn it on. That should allow it to boot up. So in the console here, I can actually see what's on the screen if I actually did have a screen attached. And if I remember correctly, it's F11 to access the boot menu. Let's make sure I catch it. Hopefully I did that fast enough. A couple more times just to make sure. And here we have the actual boot menu. So in my case, I'm going to select this option right here because I want to boot into UEFI mode, which is preferred if you have access to that. I'll press enter. What this should do is boot it right from the flash drive, and as you can see, that's exactly what it did. I think the screen is a little bit too large, so I'm going to try to shrink it down just a little bit. And hopefully that'll allow you to see it better. So right here, what we have is the actual installation menu for Proxmox VE. The first option is install Proxmox VE. I can press up and down to select a different option, but the first option is actually what I want, so I'll press enter. I'll give it a moment to start up. So the first screen here, we have the end user license agreement. So I'm just going to agree. Hopefully right here, and select the fastest storage that you have. So if I'm speaking, you probably won't want to enable ZFS. I can cancel out. Keyboard layout. I'm going to have 10 gigabit Ethernet to for me, which is with the deal I typed in is open and available for use. The general idea when it comes to how you determine which IP address to use is you log into your firewall or router interface, and inside there you'll have some DHCP options. Inside the DHCP options, you'll have a range. You'll have a starting IP address and an ending IP address. So what you want to do is choose an IP address that is not within that range. That way, you don't have to worry about the IP address that we're setting here being assigned to another group. In my case, beyond the scope of this particular throughout the installation. So I'll just give it a few moments to start up. All right, so far so good. This is the very first screen that you should see when Proxmox is starting up for the first time, or actually starting up in general. And the screen is refreshing quite a bit here, which is okay. And here we are. Proxmox has booted, and it's ready to go. In fact, it even gives us the IP address right here. I mean, we should already know what that is because we typed it in earlier. But it's basically telling us that we can navigate in a browser to this URL right here with this particular port. And if all goes well, we should actually be able to access the Proxmox interface. So let's see. So what I'm going to do is type in that exact URL right here in my browser. Moment of truth. Let's see if it works. So by default, Proxmox uses a self-signed certificate, which my browser right here doesn't actually understand. So this is normal behavior. It's recommended to get a certificate for your server if you can, but that's beyond the scope of this particular tutorial series because I don't really recommend that you make Proxmox publicly available if you can help it. So what I'm going to do instead is just actually ignore this error. I'll accept the risk, even though there really isn't a risk. The self-signed certificate was expected. And here we have the actual login screen for Proxmox. I'll type in root for the username, and then I'll type in the password, the same password that we chose during the installation process, and then I'll log in. Now, this particular message right here is normal. Proxmox is an open source solution, but you know what? They have bills to pay as well, so they have a value add service that you can subscribe to if you wish, and in particular, that's the enterprise repository. It gives you packages that are more catered for enterprise deployments, so we can safely ignore this particular message right here. But anyway, we have the user interface right here, so we know that our installation was successful, and in the next class, what I'm going to do is show you guys the Proxmox user interface in more detail. So now that you have Proxmox installed, all set and ready to go, it's time to dive into the user interface, the web console, if you will, because in the next episode, that's exactly what I'm going to walk you through. I'm going to give you an overview of the web console itself, so that way you'll know where everything is, where it's located, and some other things as well. So I'll see you over in that video, which should actually be already uploaded right now. So I'll meet you there. Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Learn Linux TV. I'm really
So sleepy.
enjoying creating Proxmox videos for you guys. It's such a fun technology. And now that you have your very own Proxmox server, it's time to dive into the web console so I can show you how to use it. Let's go ahead and take care of that right now. All right, just like I mentioned in the intro to this video, we're taking a look at the user interface for Proxmox in more detail. As you can see here, I'm currently using a web browser, which means that the interface is a web console. You should be able to access this from any browser on your LAN. So there's nothing special here. You just enter the IP address and the port number of 8006, which is the default port number for the interface. You type that into the URL bar in your browser, and you should be able to log in, and you should see the user interface like you see here. I'll be giving you more and more information about the interface as we go along throughout the series. So right now, I'm going to focus on an overview of the interface without going into too much detail. As we go along, the complexity in each class will increase. So if you are curious about higher level details here, we'll get to that later on. So the interface is broken down into a tree menu like you see right here. At the very top level, we have the data center. That's your entire data center. If you have more than one Proxmox server, you'll actually see each individual server listed down here directly underneath it. In this course, on my end at least, I'm going to be walking through the process of setting up multiple servers as we go along. On your end, you only really need one. If you have multiple servers, then you're welcome to follow along as I create additional servers. But for right now, just keep in mind you only need one server. And if you do have more than one server, and you decide to create a cluster, you'll see each of your hosts right here in this menu. We also have
And I'm so sleepy. I want to doze off for 5 minutes.
additional views up here if I drop this down.
We have a folder view, a storage view, and a pool view. I'm not going to show you these just yet because we don't really have anything to show yet. I haven't even created my first virtual machine, so there's not really a huge benefit with these additional views just yet. So here we have the actual server that we set up. If we click on summary, then you can see some details about the specs for this particular server. So as you can see, we have various meters here, such as RAM, hard drive, and CPU. That shows us how the resources are doing in general on this particular server. As you can see, there's really not a lot going on here. And that makes sense because, like I mentioned, I haven't even created my first virtual machine just yet, so there's not really a whole lot of work for Proxmox to do. Proxmox tries to stay out of the way as much as it can. So I think this memory usage and CPU usage is pretty good. It's leaving the majority of the resources available for the work that I'm going to have it do later. In addition, we get some specs regarding our server right here. So you can see in my case that I'm using an AMD EPYC CPU. It gives us the kernel version right here for this particular release of Proxmox. And also our repository status is here. So you can see that we have the enterprise repository listed here, but it's currently disabled. And that subscription does require a cost, but Proxmox is free, so you don't have to worry about losing features if you don't pay for Proxmox, but you will get additional features such as enterprise quality packages and updates, which are pretty cool. And there's several different tiers that are available that each have different benefits. So the higher level tiers are going to get you support. The higher cost options for support are going to get you, well, more support. So if you're going to be running Proxmox in the enterprise, then it's highly recommended that you consider that. If nothing else, giving a little money to Proxmox actually helps the project. I do recommend that. And in exchange for that, you'll at least get access to the enterprise repository, which is definitely very good to have. Now going through the interface here, we have a section for notes. And that's pretty handy actually. You might find it helpful to keep some notes about your server. That's pretty cool, especially if you have more than one individual that are going to be assisting you with configuring and maintaining your Proxmox server, such as those of you that are working in a team, for example. So this might be something that you'll find useful. You also have the shell section, which is pretty cool because this gives you access to a terminal window that is running on that actual node. As you see right here, it says PVE1. So if you need to use the command line interface, you can do that right here. We'll be exploring the command line interface later on in the series, so we're not going to worry about that too much right now. Under the system section, we have a networking section. We're going to be exploring this later on in the series, so I'm not going to worry about it so much right now, but if you want to create additional bridges, maybe activate other adapters, you can do that here. But again, we'll get to that later. In this section, we see the individual certificates that are enabled for the server. In most cases, the self-sign cert is fine. Now, to be fair, I don't really like seeing this exclamation mark right here for the padlock, but again, it's okay. I don't recommend that you make your Proxmox server publicly available unless you have to. If nothing else, don't make the management interface publicly available. The VMs can be publicly available, just not the interface. So I don't really see much value in setting up the cert. And anyway, in order to do that, you have to set up an account with the registrar and also purchase a domain, and that's just beyond the scope of this video. But anyway, the reason why I want to show you guys this is because if you do have access to create a domain and then purchase a certificate, or maybe use Let's Encrypt, that's definitely something you should consider if you can. It definitely doesn't hurt. We also have a section for DNS right here. So if you have a custom DNS server in your network, you should make sure that the IP address for that matches right here. And this is pretty cool. We have access to the host file for the server. So if there's any static host entries that you want to add here, you can definitely do that. Now, I actually recommend you avoid this if you can, because it's better to use DNS for hostname lookups anyway. So if you have access to a DNS server, I recommend you add any entries there, because that makes those particular entries available anywhere on your network. But if you do have a reason to update the etc host file, you can do that here. Under time, we can set the time zone. This is something that we did during the installation process, but I do recommend that you take a look at this date and time and make sure that it's correct. Just like with every distribution of Linux, if the time isn't correct, really strange things will happen. So you'll definitely want to make sure that the date and time is correct right here. If it is, we can continue. And right here, we have a section for the syslog. If you're having any trouble at all with your Proxmox server, it might be a good idea to take a look right here and just see if there's any error messages. If nothing else, if you do see an error message, you can Google that error message and see if there's a solution. Just keep in mind that the syslog is available right here if for some reason you do need to take a look at the logs. So that's it for the system section. We have an update section as well. If I click on that, we'll get a list of updates right here if any updates are available. Now, I just literally installed the server, so perhaps it hasn't had time to check to see whether or not there's updates, or maybe there's actually no updates available. We can click refresh to find out. And it's giving us this error again that we don't have a valid subscription for the server, which seems egregious and horrible, but again, it's really not bad. It doesn't matter. I'll click OK. And even though we saw that error, you can see that the process is continuing. It's going to give us an error message as we see right here, which again is normal because I don't have authorization to use that particular repository because I didn't pay for it. It's still enabled, but it's going to error out and it's going to give us an error right here. So it considers the overall process a failure, even though technically it isn't. It just wasn't able to hit that one repository. It's okay. Like I said several times, we can definitely ignore that and continue on. Now notice right here that a bunch of packages actually showed up as being available. And this is very common when you first install Proxmox. You'll definitely want to make sure that you install every single update here. I'm going to click upgrade right now. And that opens another window, as you can see right here. And it's going to give us another confirmation of the packages that are going to be upgraded if I was to continue. And you can type Y or N depending on if you want to continue or not. If you do want to continue, you can just press enter. Y is default, it's capital, that's what that means, I'll press enter. We're going to leave this window open and actually let these updates install. And every now and then you might actually get a prompt like you see here. It's asking us what encoding to use. It's UTF-8 in my case, so I'll press enter. Generally speaking, if you do see prompts like this, you can just accept the defaults. That should be fine. All right, so the process of updating the server is complete. You can safely close this window now. I'm going to click refresh again just to confirm that everything has indeed been installed. I'll close this out. And the window here is now empty, which means we did indeed install all the updates that were available, and that's great. At this point, I do recommend that you reboot the server. We'll talk about high availability later on in the series, but for now, we did install a bunch of updates, and some of those are going to be security updates, so we definitely want to reboot the server. So I'll click on reboot right here. Then I'll click on yes. So I'll give it a few minutes to reboot, and then I'll be right back. So I just updated the server, and that all went well. You can see that there's no more updates available. So next, we have this section right here, which is simply called repositories. Now here it's telling me that the enterprise repository is enabled, but there's no active subscription at this time. Anyway, this particular section of the interface right here just shows you which repositories are enabled on your server. If I did want to add another repository, I can click on the add button like I just did. And again, of course, it's going to show me that next screen one more time. But we have other repositories here that we can add, including test repositories. We also have this no subscription repository here as well, because it includes some testing and less stable updates in this repository, which I don't want on the server at this time. But if you do want to test features that are up and coming, you can enable that repository along with these test repositories if you'd like. But I don't recommend that we do that, because that could lead to breakages and things like that. That's only for those of you that really have a good reason to test these things, such as early adopters, or those of you that would like to help Proxmox test new features before they come out, which is, of course, always helpful. But again, that's beyond the scope. Just keep in mind that in this section, we can enable or disable additional repositories. Now, you might be thinking, why don't you uncheck that enterprise repository so you can stop seeing that next screen? The thing is, it's grayed out. You can't actually disable it. And the reason why is because it's a file. As you see here, it tells you where that particular file actually is. But I'm going to leave that alone. I don't really think it's that big of a deal to click on an X screen every time it comes up. So I'm not going to make any actual changes here. Also, these repositories right here are also file level repositories, like it shows here. So we're not able to comment those out either. I'm going to leave it alone, but again, just keep in mind if you want to make changes to repositories, you can do that right here. Now, I'm not going to actually talk about the firewall in too much detail in this class because we're going to be spending some time with this later on in the course. So for now, just be aware that there is a firewall inside Proxmox, and you can use that to allow or disallow traffic as you see fit. But later on, we'll get to that, so I'm going to skip this section for now. Here we have a section for storage. And what's cool about this is that you can get a listing of all the storage volumes that you have on your server right here. So if, for example, you add a new physical disk to your server, you can see it right here. You can also wipe storage volumes in this section as well. Just exercise caution if you're going to be doing that. But anyway, I think that this particular section is mainly useful if you want to just get an overview of the storage volumes that you have. And here we can see some information about the SSD that serves as the root file system for my server. It's a Samsung SSD 980, it's 1 terabyte. And then we see the individual partitions underneath. We have a partition here for LVM, and actually that corresponds to this right here. Now, it might be alarming that I am using 98% of my storage, and I haven't even created my first virtual machine yet. Here it's telling me that I only have 17 gigabytes free. That's not really true. You don't want to go by that. What this is telling us is that LVM is using up all of the hard disk, so we need to consult LVM itself to find out how much space we have free. And we can do that right here. We have a storage volume called LVM thin, and we're literally using 0 bytes of the storage, 0%. So there you go. And LVM thin is actually what we'll be using when we create a virtual machine and we tell it to create a virtual disk. It's going to store the virtual disks in this section right here, LVM thin. So if you want to know how much storage you have available, you can find out right here. Moving on, we have a path for directory storage. That's beyond the scope of this video. We also have a section for ZFS, and that's also beyond the scope here. But like I mentioned in the previous episode, if you have very capable hardware, especially hardware with a lot of memory, ZFS is a really good choice, especially if you're using Proxmox in production. If you don't have really awesome hardware, or if you're not using it in production, then you should probably leave it on the default of ext4, in my opinion. Moving on, we have self-storage. That's also beyond the scope of this video. Replication, we need 2 nodes to go through that, and we will go through clustering later on, so we're not going to worry about that right now. We have a task history section. Pretty much the same stuff you see here. So actually, you could leave the bottom section here fully collapsed and just look at this section if you want to look at the task history. It's up to you. Then we also have a section here for subscription. We have the server ID for our specific server. We probably shouldn't allow that to be seen in the public. The only reason why I'm allowing you guys to see this is because this is a test server. And actually, it's going to become a production server for me after I'm done recording the footage. So this server ID right here, it doesn't really matter if you guys see it.